On the morning of November 8, 1965, near a place called Hill 65 in Vietnam, the jungle would erupt into chaos. What followed was hours of brutal fighting on the slopes of the hill. Bayonets were fixed. Artillery and airstrikes pounded the jungle around the American lines as soldiers fought to hold their ground. By the end of the battle, 49 American paratroopers were dead. This operation was one of the first major battles for the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Vietnam, and it was a fight the men who survived would never forget. Operation Hump was designated a search and destroy operation launched by American forces on November 5, 1965. The 173rd Airborne Brigade received intelligence that a large Viet Cong force had gathered in War Zone D near the junction of the Dong Nai and Song Bi rivers. Reports suggested that a Viet Cong regimental headquarters, along with several battalions, were operating in the area roughly 22 kilometers northeast of Bien Hoa Air Base. Brigadier General Ellis Williamson, commander of the 173rd Airborne Brigade, organized the operation. The plan was straightforward. Artillery would first move into position and establish a fire base within range of the target area. Once the guns were in place, American infantry would be flown into the surrounding jungle by helicopter and begin searching the region. The only requirement was that the infantry remain within range of the artillery support. Early on the morning of November 5th, artillery units were moved into a position east of the Dong Nai River. Once the guns were set up, helicopters began lifting American troops into the operational area. By the afternoon, paratroopers from the 1st Battalion, 503rd Infantry had landed near the junction of the Dong Nai and Song Bi rivers. The rest of the day was spent organizing defensive positions and clearing fields of fire. The surrounding terrain was difficult. The area contained small hills mixed with thick jungle. Trees reached as high as 40 meters, and the undergrowth was tangled with vines and dense brush. Visibility was limited, and the thick vegetation provided excellent cover for the Viet Cong. On November 6th and 7th, American patrols moved outward from their landing zone. Companies and platoons searched the area to the south and east, essentially hunting Viet Cong forces through thick jungle growth. The work was slow and exhausting. The patrols discovered abandoned camps, bunker systems, tunnel complexes, and supplies left behind by Viet Cong units. Several booby-trapped huts were also found. The soldiers destroyed everything they could find, burning huts and blowing up tunnel entrances. But despite the signs of enemy activity, the main Viet Cong force remained hidden. The battalion continued probing west of the Dong Nai River, and late on the afternoon of the 7th, the unit established a patrol base near Hill 65. The hill was an important observation point. Intelligence reports suggested that a Viet Cong unit was operating only 2 kilometers to the west. One intercepted message had included a coded phrase, "sour apples." Before the operation began, officers had been told to pay special attention if that phrase appeared in intelligence reports. That evening, patrols were sent out to investigate the area. When they returned, they reported little activity. But one patrol had noticed fresh footprints less than a kilometer from the American position. They also heard the muffled sound of chickens somewhere in the jungle, animals often carried by Viet Cong troops for food. Unknown to the Americans, a Viet Cong battalion was already nearby. During the night, orders were given for the Viet Cong to attack the American battalion the following morning. The plan was to ambush the Americans as they moved out away from the hill. At about 6 in the morning on November 8th, 2 American companies began moving out from the patrol base, and a 3rd company stayed behind. Shortly before 8, as the advancing company entered a recently abandoned hamlet, heavy fire erupted from well-concealed Viet Cong positions only 15 to 30 meters away. Claymore mines were detonated, and heavy machine guns opened up. American troops were suddenly caught in a carefully prepared ambush. The Viet Cong attempted several times during the day to encircle and destroy the Americans, but reinforcements were sent in to secure the flanks and prevent the battalion from being surrounded. The fighting quickly became close and chaotic, with some soldiers going hand-to-hand and using fixed bayonets as small groups of Viet Cong fighters attacked at close range. At one point, the Viet Cong tried to close in on the American position so tightly that artillery and air support could not be used without hitting friendly forces. The result was brutal close-quarters fighting on the slopes of the hill. Despite heavy pressure, the American companies managed to hold their positions. Airstrikes and artillery fire were eventually called in on enemy forces moving away from the battle. The explosions set parts of the jungle on fire and ignited ammunition carried by retreating Viet Cong fighters. Later in the day, the Viet Cong attempted a larger attack on the hill. American units tightened their defensive line around the hilltop and fought off repeated assaults. Eventually, the intensity of the fighting began to decrease. By late afternoon, it appeared the Viet Cong were breaking contact and withdrawing deeper into the jungle. American troops established a night defensive position and gathered their dead and wounded. Helicopters attempted to evacuate the most seriously injured soldiers, but the thick jungle canopy made evacuation extremely difficult. Most wounded men would not be flown out until the following morning. During the battle, an American medic repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire while treating wounded soldiers. For his actions, he would later receive the Medal of Honor. On November 9th, American troops searched the surrounding area once again. But the Viet Cong had already disappeared into the jungle. With the enemy gone and casualties evacuated, the operation was brought to an end. The brigade returned to its base near Bien Hoa. Initial reports claimed that American forces had killed around 400 Viet Cong soldiers, with another 200 believed to have died from their wounds. American casualties were 49 killed and 83 wounded. Later reviews suggested that the enemy losses may have been exaggerated. The Viet Cong unit involved in the battle was smaller than originally believed, meaning the official body counts were likely too high. Even so, the battle had been one of the first major engagements for the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Vietnam. Looking back on the fight, the brigade commander later admitted that the enemy had chosen the battlefield. The Viet Cong had drawn American troops into a fight in terrain that favored them. In his words, the enemy had set a trap. Operation Hump ended after only a few days, but the fighting on Hill 65 showed how brutal the war in Vietnam would become. American paratroopers had gone into War Zone D expecting to search the jungle for scattered enemy units. Instead, they ran into a well-organized Viet Cong force prepared to fight at close range in terrain that favored them. For the 173rd Airborne Brigade, the operation was an early lesson in the kind of war they would face in the years ahead, an enemy that could disappear into the jungle, choose the ground, and strike when the moment was right.